Ontario's next grand consultation with the people happens 1 year from today, June 7th, 2018, the 42nd provincial general election. For the Green Party, it represents another opportunity for that all-important breakthrough of winning its first seat in the legislature. For more on that and other challenges that lie ahead over the next year, we welcome back Mike Schreiner, leader of the Ontario Greens, and it's good to see you in that chair again, Mike.
Good to be here, Steve.
Well, we have seen in British Columbia how significant even a party of only three Green seats can be to the future of the legislature, the future of the government, etc. And I guess I want to start by asking, what do you think you need to do to have that breakthrough where you actually win a seat here?
Well, I think, first of all, the BC election is just a game changer for Canada, and it's a game changer for Greens across the country because people now recognize that, one, Greens can be elected. Two, Greens can hold the balance of power. And I think what Andrew Weaver and the Greens in BC have shown is they can work cooperatively and collaboratively with any party, which I think is what Canadians want their politicians to do. And so we want to learn from their success, apply it in Ontario. And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that voters are hungry for a party that's basing its agenda on honesty, integrity, and policies that put people first ahead of their own partisan self-interest.
Interesting. That you did not use the word environment in that answer, on that checklist of things that voters are looking for. How come?
Well, I mean, I think most people know that the Green Party is the strongest party on the environment. I mean, we're the party that's going to protect water and farmland, that has a climate change plan to address climate change by putting money in your pocket. They know that about us. What I think they're really hungry for is a party that not only stands for that, but stands for a new way of doing politics. I think people are tired of the lack of decorum, the partisanship, the political games, the spin. They want straight answers on the biggest challenges we face.
Now, Weaver didn't go from kind of obscurity to kingmaker. He'd had a seat already himself. So clearly they're a little further down the road than you guys are here in the province of Ontario. Why do you think, I mean, this is going to be your third general election as leader of the Ontario Greens, why do you think you have not had the breakthrough yet?
Well, I think part of it is a lot of people recognize that environmental issues really resonate in British Columbia, particularly on Vancouver Island, where we've seen Elizabeth May win the first Green seat in Canada, and Andrew Weaver, of course, winning the first seat as an MLA in Canada, and now the Green Party's first caucus. And I think some of that's because, BC voter, that coastline is beautiful. I spent the last 5 days of the BC election out helping their campaign, and it's a beautiful place. And there's a number of issues, such as the LNG plant, the Kinder Morgan pipeline, Site C Dam, that really resonate there. And people see the place that they love threatened, and the Green Party's defending that. And we're starting to see that here in Ontario as well. I mean, I look at things like, the battle around the mega quarry, issues around corporations taking our water, things like that.
Which mega quarry are you referring to there?
The Langton mega quarry in Ontario, which would have been the biggest open pit mine in Canada. Huge movement against that, which is really resonating and sparking a movement around protecting farmland and water in Ontario. And I think people rightfully see the Green Party as the defender of the places and the people they love.
At any point in your journey as leader of the Ontario Greens, and knowing that for basically the last, it's probably 70 or 80 years, we have had the same three parties represented in the Ontario legislature, almost exclusively. I know Jack McLaren's got that 1 trillion seat now, but it's basically been the same three. Did you or your members at any point consider merging with one of the existing mainline parties?
No, not at all. I mean, we need a party in Ontario that's going to stand up for a new way of doing politics. That isn't going to play political games, isn't going to do political spin and all of that. And the fact that we're a party that's based on honesty, integrity, and policies that put people first, I think the people of Ontario are ready for that. One of the things that's prevented people, I think, from voting Green, at least they've told me this anyway, is that we love your vision, we love your values, we think you have the best policies and platform, but we're afraid to vote for you because we don't think you can win or because we have to vote against another party. And I think what the BC Greens have shown is that you can actually vote for what you want. You can vote where your heart is, you can vote for what you believe in, and elect a party, even if it's just one seat, elect a party that can make a real difference. And we've seen with Greens in BC and New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Elizabeth May in Ottawa, that even with one seat, Greens can change the political discourse in this province and in this country.
So shall we play a little what if? Let's do a little hypothetical here. What if, after the next election, 1 year from today, presumably, What if we get a minority parliament, and let's say you win that breakthrough, you've got
Sure.
that one Green seat, and who knows, it could be a tie, and maybe you're holding a balance of power, or who knows, maybe you're in a position to be very influential. Tell me the top 3 things that you, as the leader of the Greens, would negotiate for that would be sort of sine qua nons from whoever ends up forming the government.
Yeah, well, I think one is, first of all, very similar to the BC Greens, is we would focus on electoral reform. We want to strengthen our democracy. We think it's bad for Canadian democracy that someone like Kathleen Wynne can have 38% of the vote, 100% of the power, and then do something like privatize Hydro One, which she didn't even campaign on, and 80+% of Ontarians are opposed to. And that's what you get with false majorities. And so we want to change that to strengthen Canadian democracy.
So just let me jump in there. So does that mean that your support would be contingent on the winning party changing the voting system to, for example, proportional representation, or are you looking at a referendum, or flesh it out a bit?
Yeah, so proportional representation, absolutely, because we want to strengthen our democracy. In terms of the details of how we would roll that out, I think that would be part of the conversation, because I think people want collaboration and cooperation. They want to see parties working together. I mean, I've already done that. Like in my home riding of Guelph, I got all 4 parties together to oppose a quarry that threatens 25% of Guelph's drinking water. And I think it's that kind of building among, where parties are united to fight for what's good for the people of Ontario. That's what people want to see. That's what we can have if we have a better electoral system. So strengthening our democracy would be one of our top priorities.
Okay, what's number 2 and 3?
Yeah, so supporting small businesses to help them create jobs. Like, we are the champion of small business. I'm a small business owner myself. Most jobs in Ontario are created by small businesses. If we're going to have the innovation that we need to address some of our biggest challenges, and I would argue climate change and inequality are our 2 biggest challenges, having strong small businesses and resilient local economies is critical to success in the 21st century, and we want Ontario to be a part of that success. And then the final one is fighting climate change in a way that puts money in your pocket and builds a 21st century economy. And those would be our priorities.
Okay, flesh that one out a little bit. That means what?
Yeah. So, rather than a cap and trade system, which the Liberals have put forward, which is, good for bankers and, bond Bay Street traders, for sure. But if we're going to get a carbon price high enough to really make the difference we need in our economy, it needs to be higher than what it is right now. And if you're going to do that, you need to give the money back to the people of Ontario. We call it carbon fee and dividend. So you put a price on carbon that's high enough to make a difference, fight climate change, and you return the money back to the people of Ontario so we can start addressing climate change in a way that puts money in your pocket and also starts addressing inequality in this province.
Patrick Brown is basically running on that same position, is he not? He talks about a carbon tax where the money doesn't go into the Treasury of Ontario, but rather back to Ontarians in the form of tax cuts.
Well, it's kind of unclear what Patrick Brown stands for.
I think I just summed it up.
But I think the difference is a dividend check versus tax cuts. Tax cuts are unpredictable. I mean, is there going to be tax cuts for the wealthy? Is there going to be tax cuts for corporations?
So
what we're saying is a dividend check to people based on the carbon fee, and then that actually helps low-income people the most. And because they consume the least amount of carbon, so they would pay the least amount into it, but they would get a disproportionate amount back. And so we see that as a way to address climate change, start to alleviate poverty, and put more money in the pockets of particularly lower income and middle income people, so then they can decide what's best for them in terms of combating climate change. Is it buying an electric car? Is it buying a monthly subway pass? Is it buying a new bicycle? Is it retrofitting their home to make it more energy efficient so they can save money by saving energy?
So you empower the people to make their own choices on that.
We want to empower people to make choices.
My next question is inspired by the tie you're wearing today. I notice, of course, it's a green tie, but you've got splashes of other hint partisan colors in there as well. So I do want to ask you about your relationships with the other party leaders, starting with the Premier. Do you meet with Premier Wynne?
I do. And I think, one of the things the Green Party's shown is we've shown an ability to get things done, even without a seat at Queen's Park. Biggest example of that is we led the charge to get big money out of politics. I know you had me on a number of panels here before it was even a big issue, and people were saying, oh, Mike, nobody cares about that issue. Well, I predicted people cared a lot about that issue, and indeed, it was a huge part of last year's legislative agenda, and we led the charge on that. And to the Premier's credit, I met with the Premier, and a lot of the ideas I put on the table ended up in the final legislation that was passed. I'm not 100% satisfied with it, but we've gone a long ways in Ontario, banning corporate and union donations and significantly lowering donation limits so we can end these cash for access fundraisers.
Do you think
and I also
that was in, do you think that your ideas were in the final bill because you lobbied her to put them there?
Absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I do. I mean, it was unprecedented. The Premier met with me prior to the legislation being written. I was the second witness after the head of Elections Ontario at committee. You know, normally they give people 15 minutes. I was there for 3 hours. But wasn't just the Premier. It was Andrew Horwath and Patrick Brown also met with me and wanted to incorporate the Green Party's ideas. We even did a joint news conference together to talk about how we need all-party cooperation and collaboration in moving the legislation forward. In addition to that, I reached out to the leader of every registered party in the province to get their input into that legislation as well, because fundraising is so fundamental to our democracy, and I felt every party deserved to be heard.
Are you one of the, because I've heard Andrew Weaver say, I think he said it on this program actually, I've heard him say things like, you know, we don't actually care if we form the government, it's more important for us to influence the agenda, and if the other parties want to steal our good ideas, we're happy with that. Is that your view as well?
Absolutely. I'm in this not for my own personal self-interest or even our party's self-interest. I'm in this to make this province better for the people of Ontario. And if the other parties take our ideas and run with it, I'm happy with that if it benefits the people of Ontario. You know, 2 examples. In the 2014 election, we led the charge to liberate local beer to support our craft brewers. We haven't fully liberated in Ontario yet, but you know what? We've got a lot more Ontario craft beer available to people. We led the charge on reducing neonicotinoid pesticides that kill bees. 80% reduction now in Ontario on that issue. We led the charge on fundraising reform. We're now leading the charge on protecting water. You know what? It's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't have to take all the credit for it.
Well, that was going to be my follow-up question, which is, okay, maybe you were influential in getting the government to change positions on these issues, but my hunch is that if there's credit being doled out, they're getting it and not you, and that doesn't help you.
Well, you know what? It helps me in the sense that people in Ontario know who led the charge on it. And even if it was the Liberals who responded to the pressure we put on them, the thousands of people who signed petitions and letters telling the government to act on many of the issues we've been promoting, that's a sign of a party that can get the job done. Imagine if we just even had 1 seat at Queen's Park, we could even get more done for the people of Ontario. And that's what I'm out to do, is to fight for the people of Ontario, get that first seat, just like BC, and then maybe in the next election, we will have a Green Caucus in Ontario.
Mike, in our remaining moments here, I want to ask you a bit about you, okay?
Sure.
I mean, here you are, you've never won a seat. It's your 3rd provincial election that you're leading the party into. You have no research budget to speak of. Obviously, well, I mean, when you go watch Question Period at Queen's Park, they even make you take your green button off, okay?
That's right.
Talk about disrespect. And yet every time I see you, you seem unfailingly chipper about your situation. How come?
Because I see the difference we're making, and that's what I'm in. That's why I'm doing this, Steve. If it was all about Mike Schreiner getting power or my ego, I would have run for another party. It would have been a lot easier. But nothing in life that's worth doing is easy. I've been a small business owner. I've started 2 small businesses. I've started NGOs. People told me when I started my first local organic food business in Guelph, people said, what you're trying to do is impossible, Mike. When I helped co-found a NGO that was about getting local sustainable food into public institutions, people said, that's impossible. But you know what? I've succeeded at those things, and I'm succeeding as leader of the Green Party and making a difference in Ontario for the people of Ontario. And I'm going to keep fighting for the people of Ontario, and I'm going to get that first seat at Queen's Park so we can really bring the change that I know people in this province are hungry for.
I do want to know, though, about your darker moments, because there must be times when you are frustrated at the slow rate of progress. And let's be honest, progress has not been sort of steady, right? You had pretty good results 2 elections ago, and then you went down in the last election. And what do you do when you get frustrated and you want to pull that hair out and say, it's not happening yet?
Yeah, oftentimes I go for about a 50, 75K bike ride. And I listen to the agenda a lot on my podcast. So I do, there are tough moments where you have to step back and think, why am I doing this?
Because you've got young kids, too,
I've got young kids. Actually, one of the best things to do is I do a daddy-daughter canoe trip with both my daughters every summer. And it's amazing, in some beautiful lake or river in Ontario, and you're paddling, and you're looking at your daughter sitting in the front of the canoe. and you're reflecting on what you're doing in your life. And it's at moments like that where I just feel like, you know what, I have to keep fighting. Like, I have to keep fighting for what I believe in. And I keep telling myself, I have this little note on my desk that I look at every morning when I go down to my computer, and it says, I want to get elected for the right reasons, not taking the easy path. And that's exactly what we're out to do. And I think we're already succeeding at it, and we're going to succeed even more at it.
I presume the path for you again leads to Guelph. You'll be running there in the next election?
Yeah. I love Guelph. Beautiful city, the best place in Ontario to live, and I'm going to be a strong voice for Guelph.
Do I also presume that this will be your final election as leader of the Greens?
You know, I don't want to make any speculations like that right now. I'm really focused on, between now and the next election, what can we do to keep fighting for the people of Ontario? And then how do we go into that next election, win that first Green seat, bring the kind of change to Queen's Park that people are hungry for?
Okay, that's our time. Can I wish you in 2 days' time happy birthday?
If I can wish you happy birthday.
We do share a birthday, you and I. That is true. That is true.
Well, happy birthday.
Along with the federal Green leader, Elizabeth May.
That's
Same
right.
birthday. Thanks for sparing some time for us here at TVO tonight. Thanks so
Anytime,
much.
Steve. It's always a pleasure.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.